Hello YouTube family and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, my name is McKinney and I love making videos about capsule wardrobing. Today I'm talking about one of my favorite style aesthetics. It's one that I often infuse into my personal style and I just find that it is so fun and so much of it is super timeless. So today I'm collaborating with Lindsay from Lindsay Living to talk about the 70s aesthetic and how we can incorporate 70s type things into both our wardrobes and in our home decor. If you haven't checked out Lindsay's channel, you should definitely go over there. We started YouTube around the same time and she makes really great content talking about interior design, different interior design trends. She also does a lot of fun projects in her home that we get to follow along with. So if you're interested in hearing some ways that you can incorporate 70s style into your home decor for this fall season, definitely check out her video down below in the description. So before we get started into some of the ways that we can incorporate 70s style into our wardrobes, I want to invite you to please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. It would mean the absolute world to me. I love making capsule wardrobing content, color scheme content, and I also love making shop your closet content. So if you really enjoy a style inspiration as well as capsule wardrobe educational content, you should definitely subscribe because my channel is for you. Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it and would like to see more content like this, and comment down below what your favorite part of the 70s aesthetic is. Let's go ahead and get started. So before I get into how we can incorporate the 70s aesthetic into our wardrobes for this fall, I want to give a bit of a background on this kind of aesthetic as well as the 70s era in general, just to provide some context to what we're talking about today. So in terms of fashion, personal style and this kind of individuality really came together in the 1970s. We see a huge rise in popular culture and things like the disco scene and music culture. And the fashion of the era was actually largely influenced by this kind of individuality, but also by the pop culture. So really influenced by disco, especially in the later part of the 1970s, but also influenced by the different designers, but especially influenced by a lot of music and film. There were a lot of icons in the 1970s, and they are definitely, I think, still many of them are icons today. And those icons like Joni Mitchell, Dolly Parton, Jane Birkin, Cher, and Farrah Fawcett are all huge influences in the fashion of the time. And also, those are just some of my favorites that I decided to highlight. Some big designers that really came into their own in the 1970s include YSL, Diane von Furstenberg, Vivienne Westwood, and Karl Lagerfeld. And though I'm not really big into keeping up with high fashion or anything like that, it's fun to see where some of the fashion influences came from. So both pop culture and high fashion kind of merged to create this really individual culture that was both influenced by your personal style, but also by society and pop culture as a whole. So I'm breaking this guide to implement 1970s aesthetic into your wardrobe into 4 different elements. The first one is fabrics and textures, and then I want to talk about colors, then patterns and prints, and lastly, shapes and silhouettes. This way, there are many different kinds of things covered, and you can find ways to find that 70s vibe without necessarily having to go out and buy really costumey pieces or pieces that you feel are overly trendy. So first, let's talk about fabrics and textures in the 1970s. There are a lot of really distinct ones that you probably already have in your wardrobe. And I think the fabrics and textures of the 1970s really embody either this shiny, almost sheen to it, or it's a really stand out kind of look. So while we have our basic kind of wool jersey knits that are made to stand out with different patterns, we also have really standout fabrics, like a very shiny satin or that almost velvety texture of corduroy. And another one I think is embroidery or even crochet or like knit patterns that really stand out. And the way to implement this is really easy. Just going to your closet and saying, okay, what kind of fabrics do I have that have this soft, shiny quality about them? I think that is a really great way to simply dress something up. For example, with this pair of corduroys that I have from Everlane, they're this kind of dark, more wearable color, but they still have that soft texture and a little bit of the shine that corduroy gives off. Not only is this a great staple piece for the fall because it's a little bit warmer, but it's also super fun and easy to dress up and dress down. Next, for colors, we see that there are a lot of really warm colors at the forefront of the 1970s aesthetic. So even just like a quick search on Pinterest for like 1970s style or 1970s aesthetic will give you a lot of really kind of warm and earthy toned type pictures. Colors like yellow, rust, camel, and forest green are really big, and they're all worn together in really beautiful ways. And I think this is absolutely perfect for the fall because these colors are in a lot of people's fall color schemes because they are just autumnal colors. And so while these colors are really popular in this season right now, you can either shop sustainably or shop secondhand for something in these colors. I'm sure you can find something really awesome, but you can also shop your closet. So for example, I'm wearing this blazer today, and so even though it is a little bit more of a structured piece, that camel color really brings in that warmth that lends itself to a 1970s aesthetic. Even more if you pair it with a wide leg jean and a pair of clogs and a neck scarf like I've done here. And if these colors aren't necessarily for you, but you want to try them out, you could always see if you find them in an accessory like a beret or a scarf or even a bag. That would be a really great way to implement some of these colors without having to lean all the way into this aesthetic. And the great thing about color trends is that you can pick whether you want to go all in, even to the point of being a little bit costumey, or you want to make it super subdued and just really kind of an undertone of 70s aesthetic without being too in your face. So next I want to talk about patterns and prints. And I think this is a really, really great way to implement 70s style into your wardrobe. It's easy because just one piece in one of these patterns can really make your wardrobe stand out, and it might be something that you already have. So the first one, of course, is floral print. I think floral print really had a huge moment in the 1970s, especially with the leftover of the hippie movement from the 1960s, but also with the rise of kind of this prairie aesthetic. We have these labels like Gunny Sacks who are making these really beautiful prairie style dresses with a lot of ornate lace detailing, but also these beautiful warm toned floral prints and patterns. And of course, when I think about this, I immediately go to this Doan dress that I have in my wardrobe. I think Doan as a brand actually does a really great job kind of embodying this prairie aesthetic, and a lot of their pieces are 70s inspired. And so this dress both has a little bit of that prairie going on with the ruffles and the pin tuck, but also the floral pattern just makes it feel super 1970s, especially if I pair it with a pair of clogs. The next two are really easy to do, and those are graphic tees and tie-dye. So graphic tees are something that I've been experimenting a little bit in my wardrobe, but we see a lot of really tight t-shirts in the 1970s, and some of them are those ringer tees, you know, those ones that have like the different color collar and the different color on the hem of the sleeve. And I think that is really, really fun, but it's also kind of a timeless style. You could find it in timeless colors like black and white, or you could go for something standout like red or green. You can do this with a plain t-shirt, or you could do this with a graphic tee. And there are a lot of places to find really cool graphic tees that don't necessarily feel elementary or childish. So Imogene and Willie have some really, really great ones. Cezanne has some really beautiful graphic tees. And graphic tees are also a really great thing to thrift. You might even find something that is actually from the 1970s. And we can't talk about the 1970s without talking about tie-dye. And lucky for us, tie-dye has kind of been a trend that comes back and goes away. And even though it's not a trend that I think I could necessarily wear for a long time, just for me personally, it's really easy to either buy used or to make in your home. So let's say you have like an old white t-shirt that is getting a little dingy, go pick up some RIT dye from the store in your favorite colors. It can literally be any color that you want it to be, and tie-dye that up. You can really go for a 70s vibe inexpensively and using things that you already own. And the next are two of my favorites. So plaid and check pattern are really big, and that's because there's almost kind of this academia aesthetic, I think, that comes through in the 1970s a little bit. But plaid is one of my favorites. I think most definitely you see plaid in a lot of pants, but that might be a little bit too stand out for you. I think it might be for me. And because I'm pear-shaped, I don't necessarily want to draw that much attention to my lower half, especially in a pair of pants. So if I want to go for a check up top, like this kind of check sweater or this plaid blazer, those are really great ways to nod to the 1970s aesthetic without being too on the nose. And the last element of 1970s style that I want to talk about, I think, is probably the most important. And these are the different shapes or silhouettes. In terms of dresses or more feminine wear, we see a lot of empire waist designs, and I think that's a lot of fun. It's not necessarily for me because I really like to highlight the smallest part of my waist, but this is a really easygoing kind of silhouette, and it's super comfortable, especially if you're still working from home. There's some really beautiful versions of these at sustainable websites like Christy Dawn has really beautiful ones, and then Shop Doan also has some really beautiful empire waist pieces. But you could also try to go to a local vintage or thrift store, and I'm sure you could maybe find something on Poshmark, but definitely check out Etsy because they have a lot of independent vintage sellers on there that are bound to have a classic 1970s empire waist dress for you. The next is an absolutely iconic part of the 1970s, and that is the bell-bottom jean. So I think that flare jeans or bell-bottom jeans are really on the nose when it comes to 1970s style. And if that is your goal, totally go for it. You can definitely find a pair of flare jeans secondhand, but there are also brands that are making flare jeans right now because 1970s aesthetic is so popular. I personally opt for a subtler version of the 1970s denim silhouette, and that is just going for a pair of wide leg pants. And the great thing about wide leg pants is that they're definitely timeless. So if you're looking to invest in some denim or different pants like these corduroys that I have, then you should totally go for a wide leg because I think it'll last you a lot longer than a flare would. Another classic 1970s silhouette is tight on the top and loose on the bottom. So whenever we see basic pairings like pants and a top in 1970s style, it usually is tight on the top and loose on the bottom. So there are really easy ways to achieve this. One is by going for those wide leg pants that are a little bit looser and that come out higher up on your waist, and to go for a fabric that is ribbed on the top, and that will really contour your shape and the proportions will be nicely balanced out with the loose on the bottom. You can do this in a tank silhouette, which I think is super 1970s, or you can opt for a longer sleeve silhouette here like I've done with this blouse from Cezanne. It's this really beautiful knit fabric, and I've paired it with some tighter jeans here that I think really help to balance it out. And of course, you can't go wrong with a clog for 1970s style. And the next is an absolutely classic to 1970s style, but I would also claim that it is a classic anyways, and that is the wrap dress silhouette, specifically one that is tighter and closer to the body. So this wrap dress silhouette really came into its own when Diane von Furstenberg designed this silhouette and showed it on the runway. This is a classic look of dress that is timeless and stunning that you can find in many different patterns. And if you're looking for specifically a DVF one, you can always go to a secondhand luxury resale like Vestiaire Collective or like The Real Real. And the last silhouette or shape that I want to talk about are platforms. So this is really specific to shoes, of course, and I think platforms are really big and super reminiscent of the disco era. And even though I don't have crazy platforms, I do have a couple of pair of clogs that are already kind of 1970s that do have a bit of a platform on them, and that is just enough for me. So that's that for today's video. I hope that you've enjoyed it and you found some easy ways to implement 1970s style into your closet for this fall season if that's something you're interested in. Definitely go check out Lindsay's video. Again, it's linked down below in the description box. If 1970s aesthetic is something that you love and you would like to implement it into your interior design, definitely check out her video. She has some really awesome tips and some beautiful inspiration. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. It would be totally groovy if you did, and give me a thumbs up if you enjoy content like this and would like to see more of it. I want to thank you so much for joining me in today's video. It's been an absolute honor to spend this time with you, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Have a great week. Bye!